Sixers beat writer Tom Moore from Calkins Media is in attendance and will give us some more insight on tonight's NBA Draft Lottery. Tom, you've been to a bunch of these the last couple of years. Hopefully this is the one that turns out their way, but we know there's a lot of crazy percentages for this team tonight. And for most people out there who just think they're the worst team, that doesn't necessarily mean the percentages are in your favor to get the number one pick.
So, I mean, it doesn't make sense per se because there's, the worst team that gets a 25% chance to get the number one pick, and they have the best chance. They actually have more than that because of the option to swap picks with the Kings. But in the last 11 years, only one team with worst record has gotten the first pick, which is, you would think logically it would happen more than that. Now, that has nothing to do with tonight. They're totally separate, but it's just the way that it is, worked out. I think there's a 13.4% chance they get number one and number four, which is the best case scenario, which I think would really help and give Brian Colangelo a lot of options with that fourth pick. And, the big thing, obviously, get into the top two so they can get either Ingram or Simmons. It's widely perceived to be a two-player draft, and those are the two, difference makers. At least that's what most people, think. But, yeah, you're right. There's so many different combinations and possibilities that it's kind of mind-numbing.
It sure is. There is a lot of possibilities here. And, yes, last week we talked to Brett Brown, and he said, I'm greedy. I want both of those picks. Is that universally the feeling around the organization that they feel that, you know what, you don't know what the Lakers are going to do next year. Give us that pick now if we can get it.
Yeah, I think the Sixers would like that because you use the first pick, and then with the second pick, you could theoretically trade down. If there's somebody you like that's going to be there, you could acquire a player you like plus a later pick, or you could trade it for an established or younger, budding star in the NBA, maybe a Jimmy Butler, somebody like that, depending on the circumstances. So, yeah, I just think the Lakers have more money. They have over $60 million in cap space if they can get a couple pretty good free agents. And D'Angelo Russell and Randall and some of those younger players progress. That could be the 7th or 8th pick next year, and that's a big difference from 4 or 5. So I think it'd be best for them. And it'd just give another player or another entity, to start developing this group and moving things forward. And that's what Brian Colangelo wants to do. He wants to start being competitive. And he believes in roster balance, not just big men and small men, but younger guys and maybe guys with a little bit of experience. I don't mean 10-year veterans, but like some guys with 3 or 4 years that have been around, that have played in the league, that they think maybe are undervalued and, could handle a bigger role in a team like the Sixers.
Tom Moore's with us, Sixers beat writer from Calkins Media. He's on his way to the NBA Draft Lottery tonight. And, Tom, you mentioned the word trade. If they were to get the Laker pick, does that make it more of a possibility that we could see that younger veteran player come their way via trade?
Yeah, I think if they only get 1 or 2, I'd be surprised if they trade that pick. If they get 4, which I think there's about a 34% chance, and 5, there's about a 10% chance. I think that, a lot of things could be in play. As I said, potentially trade that pick and a player maybe for a better player and a slightly lower pick if there's somebody they're targeting later in the lottery where they think will be there at 6 or 7 or 8. Or you could trade for another player or, possibly, package that pick and one of the later first-round picks. It just gives you a lot of options. And, there's only really 2 core players that you know of right now, I would say, in Noel and Okafor. It's possible one of those could be a play or, that Colangelo will consider, trading, I would think, as I say, balancing the roster. So you really want to start getting the core group together. Embiid, obviously, it's a huge question mark. Sarge comes over, he could be maybe your first big guy off the bench, and now you're starting to throw 2 or 3 first-round picks in. And, you start to have a roster that, a group that, that you can start going forward with. I mean, they need guards and they need a small forward. Those are huge need areas. And it's not an accident they talked to a lot of guards at the Combine. They had a bunch of guards in yesterday in the first pre-draft workout.
Tom, there's so much to dive into as tonight is a very important night. Let's start with the 2 most recent picks, or I guess not the most recent because Embiid and Saric would be in there, but Noel and Okafor. Number 1, which guy do you, if they had to choose one of those guys to move, do they preference one guy over the other? And number two, which guy do you think has more value around the league?
As far as their preference, it could depend on, do they think, like if they think Noel could play with Embiid, for example, better than Okafor, that could impact things. And as far as around the league, probably Okafor has more value just because he's only 1 year into his rookie contract, whereas Noel is 3 years in. So Noel will be a restricted free agent after this year, so he's going to have to get paid, whereas teams will have control of Okafor for 3 more years. This year guaranteed, the next 2 years team option. So I would think that would probably make him more enticing, an offensive guy. Noel's more of a defensive guy that really needs to develop that mid-range jumper. So, I don't know. It depends on, what they see, what they value most. If you combine the two, you'd have a pretty good player. But you have an offensive guy in Okafor and a defensive guy in Noel, and neither one is particularly good at the other end. Noel just alley-oop dunks and so on, but has no sort of signature move inside. And, I think he shot 29% from 3 feet and out last year. So if he's not dunking or laying it up, he's generally not scoring. And Okafor's not a real good defender or rebounder. So, it depends kind of maybe on, and also depends what you can get for them,
No doubt. And, Tom, many people have surmised that if they don't get one or two, that it would be very disappointing. Do you have that same feeling that it's a 2-player draft? Not to say that 3, 4, 5 to 10, 12 are not going to be good players, but do you feel that not getting 1 to 2 would be a disappointment for what we just watched for the last 82 games?
I think so, Mike. I mean, you're talking 47 wins and 199 losses. And if you get the number 3 pick 3 years in a row, that doesn't seem like it's worth it, in terms of all they're losing. Maybe Buddy Hield or Murray or Chris Dunn or somebody, could really help. They'd be upgrades from what the Sixers had. But you have to be in the top 2, I think, to make this sort of validate the process that they've gone through. I think that's a common perception, and I tend to agree with it.
Yeah, Tom, and, one of the things that's interesting is if you follow Tom on Twitter, is that Timor 76ers, you'll see footage of Joel Embiid, and how much are they putting into him? Do you feel, is the feeling around the organization starting to shift towards they're anticipating him being back more so than they're hoping him being back?
I think they're cautiously, they're maybe just on the good side of cautiously optimistic, because he was looking pretty good last year and had a setback, and ended up having having a setback, and then getting the surgery in mid-August, and going through this whole process again with the bone graft surgery. So I mean, you just see him do things, and shooting and driving away, and now he's dunking again. And he's a very vocal guy. He talks a lot as he's driving to the basket and gets calls out, stuff like that. Kind of the whole gym watches. He was working out when some of the young guys were finishing up and doing interviews, like Josh Hart was talking and so on. It's just kind of hard not to watch, because it's just a very interesting sight. And he starts real slow and builds up, shoots free throws, one-handed things. Then he works on fadeaways and dunks. And assistant coach Lloyd Pierce has like a stick, a padding on his arm to kind of pump him with and just try to push him around and, make it more difficult for him. And he missed the driving left-handed layup, and Embiid called out, "You're lucky it's Monday," and then, which was funny. And then Lloyd Pierce was really good too. He goes, "It's Monday for me too." What are you talking about? And then Embiid laughed. That was funny. I enjoyed that. I have that in my video. Toward the end, I have the sound all the way up to that. The rest of the stuff I talk over and get background with him shooting and all. But I thought that was a really interesting, sort of an interesting exchange. And he's smiling and laughing, and really seems to be. He was getting very tired by about a half an hour in. He was sweating, doubled over. But you can see every time you see him, he's progressing more and more. Supposedly he's going to be playing 2-on-2 this week, and but he hasn't played 5-on-5, since the beginning of March of 2014, his only year at Kansas. That's when he had the stress fracture in his back. So, it's been a long time. So I don't think they're going to push it. They don't think he's ready. They're going to take their time and not, they'll choose to be cautious more so than taking a chance. I think at this point that's the right thing to do.
Now, Tom, you've seen him since the day he was drafted and the stuff he's been able to do, the limitations he has had. How far advanced is he from his low point?
I'm sorry, how far?
How far advanced is he from his low point, from not being able to do anything, from being in a boot?
Yeah, well, I'll say he looks a little thinner than he did a year ago at this time. I think that helps, too, when you have 275 pounds on his, on a navicular bone, a little bone in his right foot, pounding, running up and down the court. That's a lot to deal with, trip after trip. So even 10 pounds makes a big, big difference for him. So, you can see why people are so enthralled, and why anytime I post a video, anybody talks or tweets about him, people go gaga, because he does do things no one else on this roster, very few big men in the league can do and have done, but he's got to be able to physically handle it, and I'm sure he won't play back-to-back games. He'll be on minutes restrictions if he is ready to play at the start of the season. But the Sixers are hopeful, and it would certainly help this whole process if he can play.
Yeah. Now I'll say this: I saw him. The last time I saw him do anything was when they played Golden State in Philly, so it was like December. He wasn't really elevating off that foot. It was a lot of standstill jumpers, Tom. Your video is showing a lot more dunking, landing on that foot. So it seems that he has advanced in terms of what he is, or what they're allowing him to do, much more from December to where we are today.
Yeah, no doubt about it. He was shooting one-legged jumpers, but he was lifting his left leg up and jumping with his right and landing with his right, which I noticed. And that's the foot that he has had the 2 surgeries. So clearly, the bone and everything must be progressing to allow him to do more. And he just got a little more bounce in his step. He's moving a little quicker. Again, he's not 100%. He's not going all out. He's not, scrimmaging and doing all that stuff. But every time you see him, he does a little bit more. He jumps a little higher. He goes he's a little quicker, a little more, as I like to call them, basketball moves than he's done before.
Tom Moore's with us. Calkins Media covers the 76ers. He's on his way to the NBA Draft Lottery tonight. The last time they had 2 picks in the lottery, they ended up with Dario Saric. Tom, how much information do you have on that situation? Are you in limbo like everybody else, just waiting to hear his answer on what he wants to do? Or is there strong indication to you that he will be coming here?
Well, there is, the father, and supposedly he's telling people he's not going back, but, there were rumblings last year that he might go back for the second year, although there really wasn't a viable buyout after the first year. So I really think, you can sort of be hopeful and hate to use the term again, but cautiously optimistic. But until you see something that he's agreed, or we hear that, I would think there's certainly a better chance. But also don't forget, if he stays, he doesn't have to for a third year. He's not bound by his rookie contract next year. He could make twice the money. He'd be a restricted free agent. Sixers would have still have his right. But he wouldn't be bound to that rookie contract where he's making $3 million a year. He could make $6 or $7 million a year, if that is a big factor. And people say it's not, but it's hard for it not to be. So you balance that versus wanting to play in the NBA, a childhood dream type of thing. And you think there's a good chance, but until it's official, you really just don't know.
Yeah, and a lot of people are just going off of stuff this father has said, indications from some reporters over there, some indications that he's unhappy with the coaching over there, and that over all he understands that he's going to be losing money, but is okay with it. But you're right, Tom. When push comes to shove, we'll see if he makes that decision. Do you have any idea if there's a deadline or when he has to make a choice or make an announcement on that?
No, I don't. I'm not 100% sure. His season is over there. So, I would think if it's going to happen, it'd happen by around July 1st because the Sixers will have a rookie camp, and then they'll be playing in a couple of summer leagues in July. So I would think that they would want him involved in those. So if it's going to happen, I would assume it'll happen in the next 6 weeks or so to allow him to play in the summer league, get a taste of what it's going to be like here, and then have a couple more months to get ready for the start of training camp at the end of September. So I would think, in the near future, if it's going to happen.
Tom Moore covering the NBA Draft Lottery tonight. How does this work here, Tom? You guys don't get to see any of this go down, right? These are all kind of predetermined. These are all pre-picked before the television show that they put on?
Some people are allowed in the room. They're selected reporters, and there's a representative from each team in there, and you're not allowed to have your cell phone or any mobile devices or anything like that because they don't want the word getting out who actually witnessed the actual draft. And then the rest of us will be in the ballroom with some of the top players and representatives from all the different teams and so on, and we'll watch it as they turn them over. But yes, it has already been done at that time, but the only people who would know are the people in that room who are not permitted to tell anybody. So we're sort of finding out as everybody else is. It's a very interesting. And realize if they turn over number 4 and it says 76ers, that means it's the 76ers pick. If they turn it over and they say 76ers from Lakers, that means they get the pick from the Lakers. That's how you differentiate between the two picks. So you'll know at number 4, if you see 76ers from Lakers, that means they get that pick. And then the Sixers would be in the top 3. And same as Sacramento. If Sacramento doesn't turn over at number 9, that means they're in the top 3. The Sixers could end up getting Sacramento's pick too. It's a very, very interesting way of doing things. It took me a few years to kind of figure out, but after I don't know if it was like 16th lottery or something like that, you sort of have it pretty much nailed down at this point. What happens when they turn them over in inverse order? You realize what's happening.
Thank you, Tom. This is Pete Thompson. I appreciate the insight. So now I know how to watch it tonight when those the cards are turned over, the ping pong balls are announced. So in this lottery, Tom, even with the best odds, history's not on the Sixers side, right?
No, it's interesting. It's unusual, but in the last 11 years, last year was the only year that it's happened that the team with the worst record has got the number 1 pick, and that was the Timberwolves. Usually the team with the best record, historically, at least in the last 11 years, number 2 has been the most popular landing spot, which wouldn't be the worst case here. You just don't want to fall to 3 or 4. And as I said, it'd be really nice to get that Laker pick just to give a lot of options.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just to give more options in moving this thing forward, Pete.
So who do you think's the better fit? Because I've said Simmons, Mike Gill has said Ingram. We could go back and forth on that forever. Who
break
do you
the tie.
Yeah, you break our tie.
It's really tough. It really is because I think the perception is that Ingram has more potential, but maybe isn't as NBA ready. He's very lean, but he's a shooter, which they need. And Simmons seems to have that it factor. Doesn't shoot well. If he can develop a decent mid-range shot, then he's kind of got everything. Honestly, the best place in a way might be to finish number 2, because then people can't say, why didn't you take this guy? Why didn't you take that way? You take whoever doesn't go number 1, which means you'd probably get Ingram. And that wouldn't be the worst thing. 6'9", 196. He can really shoot, and this team really needs shooters. So, I mean, I think as long as they get one of the top 2, I think it would, that would sort of validate this whole process in the third year of the tank.
So perfect situation that a lot of Sixers fans are hoping for, 1 and 4. Who are the 2 players you take in those spots?
I would probably take Simmons at 1, and 4, I would say there's a decent chance they could make some sort of a trade unless there's somebody they really value who's there that they really like. I could see them possibly trading down and acquiring another player for another team. So I think 4 would give them a lot of options.
Hey, Tom, Brett Brown told me that he felt that free agents are going to start to take notice of the 76ers. Not to say, yes, we're going to get Kevin Durant this offseason, but if they are a player at all in free agency, is there one that maybe sticks out to you that makes some sense and has some connections to this team?
Part of it depends if they get one of those small forwards, maybe a guy like Harrison Barnes going after somebody like that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But somebody like that would be good. I'd be a little wary of Bradley Beal. He tends to get hurt a lot. I like the way he plays, but he's injured a lot. Ken Bazemore is another small forward. These guys are going to get overpaid because the cap's going up and everything like that. So, they're not going to be players in the Durant and the things like that. But, maybe trading for a guy under contract on another team, like I said, Jimmy Butler. Brian Colangelo had DeRozan in Toronto. I'm not sure. He's a two-guard. I'm not sure. That would be an option. He's going to want a lot of money. I'm not sure, how much he would move things forward, but, that could be a consideration. There's, there are some names of that sort of second-tier guy that are out there. They're going to command a lot of money, but that would certainly be upgrades for the Sixers.
All right, Tom Moore is on his way to the NBA Draft Lottery tonight. He'll have full coverage. You can follow him on Twitter. Of course, T-Moore 76ers, and, of course, Calkins Media is where you can read all his stuff. Tom Moore from the covers the 76ers here on the Sports Bash 97.3 76ers 97.3 ESPN. Thanks, Tom.
Sure, guys. Have a good one.